this is like the most short I've ever seen him come up.
I'll give you a saying that I really like, and I've heard it on shows before. He shrunk smaller than mini-me.
Oh, I wonder who said that. What's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morganson. This is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Nick at N Morganson Radio. You can follow this show at MTGP ETB across social media. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com. You can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to like and subscribe. And this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. Okay, so we have a lot to get to today. Some hardcore sports news. Steve Smith banged some guy's wife. I guess that's an interesting way to put it.
I was looking forward, and by the way, Nick, you and I haven't done a show together in a long time.
Probably like 6 months.
And this was a perfect show. I'll just tell you right now, there is really good topics, including media, which you and I can spend hours on.
Actually, most of our topics today have nothing to do with sports, just about things outside we could almost call the show Outside the Lines today, because everything is about things going on outside the lines.
Hey, that's a premiere show. It still is a premiere show.
Yeah, it's a really good show too. I remember that's when I first heard of these two Indian baseball players that played on the Pirates.
Oh yeah, that's right.
These two pitchers. It was a fascinating story. This is a little less heartwarming than that.
Yeah, this one's brutal.
I mean, it's warming in other ways, but
well, maybe for Steve Smith Sr., but nobody else.
Well, not anymore.
Let me take that back. Steve Smith Sr. and this guy's wife. It was warming for.
Right. Well, it was. Not so much anymore.
Let's just say he completed the octopus. He got the touchdown and the 2-point conversion, which caused a huge viral sensation.
Yeah. So basically, this girl, Nicole Martinez, is her name. Very common name, I'm sure. And she is a part of the Ravens marching band.
Something. Let's just say that she works for the Ravens. That's what we found out.
Yeah, let me just look this up for a second. Marching Ravens. Is that like the flight crew or something like that?
I have no idea. I'm just looking at the screenshot that the husband took. And
Baltimore's Marching Ravens. They're called the Marching Ravens. It's kind of like the flight crew.
That sounds about right.
And honestly, here's my biggest takeaway of this. I didn't know people in marching bands got laid. That's the most interesting part of this. I always thought of marching band members as kind of like nerds, and now like this is really putting them over the top, I'd say.
But wait a minute, when you say nerd, you're talking more about the male nerds.
That's true. It's more of that's true. It's not so much the women; it's the guys stereotypically that you think of as being nerds in the marching band.
And again, with context, usually you don't think of very many women in a marching band. Like that usually is not the case.
I would venture to guess most of them are guys.
Right. And I'm not putting it down. Hey, you want to be in a marching band? Be my guest. I'm not trying to pull the whole you can't be see, that's them calling me saying I totally just offended somebody, by the way.
Right. Who are you, Johnny? Phone ringing in the middle of the show?
I try. But this story is just insane, and when I see this, and it was viral all over Twitter. And by the way, kudos and points to the guy who decided to put the phone call and record it on social media.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that he did it, but also it didn't really tell you anything. Like, it was just him. Can we play it now?
Yeah, I have it.
All right, yeah, let's just play the audio.
So, just for one more piece of context before we go to it, I had to shorten part of it. I didn't touch any of the actual audio. I had to shorten it because if I left it the way it was, you literally would have been hearing like 10 to 15-second pauses between every response.
Right.
So just keep that in mind when you hear this, that it's a little quicker. So take a listen to the call. We'll react to it.
Hey, yo, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you've been fucking my wife, bro. What you gotta say for yourself?
I'm sorry.
You're sorry? You fucking knew she was married.
Did she?
You're not a fucking idiot, man. You're fucking Steve Smith Sr. What kind of dumb shit was that? Why are you quiet, man? Be a fucking man. Steve. You ain't a fucking man, bro. All that shit you do on fucking TV, all that shit talking you do to other people. Now someone's got you on the fucking phone, you can't even fucking man up.
That is the classic right there. When you know that you did something wrong, you're just like, I'm out of here.
No. It's not even that. I mean, I will say the worst feeling in the world, honestly, is when your only response is, I'm sorry. If like that's the only thing you can say in that moment. By the way, the funny thing is that like he says, you're not an idiot, you're Steve Smith Sr., as if he's talking to Einstein or something, like Steve Smith is the smartest person in the world.
That's what I said to you before we started here. I'm like, not all most athletes are dumbasses.
I would venture to guess that, yeah, because I think in general, when you're really good at one thing, you tend to be really bad at the other things. Like when you're really athletic, you tend to be really, your IQ might take a little bit of a hit. I think there might be some of that too. But like I will say this, and this is just not really a point, just an observation. It's the smallest I've ever seen Steve Smith sort of come across.
Kind of shrunk.
Sort of like, but you know how he is. He's really big and bold and always has had sort of an attitude. You know what I mean? And this is like the most short I've ever seen him come up.
I'll give you a saying that I really like, and I've heard it on shows before. He shrunk smaller than mini-me.
Oh, I wonder who said that.
And I don't remember exactly who said it.
It was Skip Bayless.
Oh, was it Skip Bayless? Okay.
Yeah, when talking about LeBron.
I don't know why I didn't remember that. I just remember that saying like sticks out to me just because that's what Steve Smith Sr. did. He acted like he had no idea what he was doing. It was almost like he either got caught with his pants down or he was taking like the walk of shame.
Well, quite literally.
Well, quite literally. But it was almost like taking the walk of shame. Like, what am I supposed to do? All right, I'm caught.
Here's my question. Here's the thing. He probably had no idea that this would ever go public. And what I think is also likely true, I'm not saying I know this for a fact, I have a feeling this has happened many times, and he's probably banged many marching band members that likely were married. Maybe not the marching band specifically, but people that he maybe shouldn't be, like extramarital affairs. He is married, I think.
Well, yeah, he is married.
And it's probably not the first time the husband has confronted him in some way. So he probably never even thought twice that this would go public.
But this is a lot of athletes. Not every athlete. Let me be very clear about that. It's not every athlete. But athletes, professional athletes, think that they're better than everybody else and they can get away with murder. No pun intended.
Because they're prodigies from the times that they're like young. And you know what? When you're constantly told you're so great, you're going to believe it. And the other thing is they can kind of do it in a sense. Like they can get away with it a lot more than others. Like if you were construction and you cheat on your wife, you look like an asshole. But the more famous you are, the more money you have, you look like a bit less of an asshole. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, the worst part is because these guys are so famous, they find a way to hide it or bury it, and it never gets figured out. In this scenario, the husband finds out, goes on Twitter, or I think it was on all social medias, but Twitter was the one I found it on, records the phone call, number one. And then he's like, dude, you're an asshole. Like, just admit it. And like, you think you're so smart because you're on NFL Network, which, by the way, he might lose his job at NFL Network, depending on how this plays out.
You think so? I don't know. I mean, maybe the only reason I could see him maybe losing his job at NFL Network is because it was with a Ravens marching band member. Like that's the reason why. You remember what happened with Steve Phillips
Yes.
at the MLB Network, and he
Yeah.
lost his job because he banged I think it was like an intern or something like
It was
that.
ESPN, not MLB Network.
I'm sorry, it was ESPN. He's on the MLB Network now, I think.
Yes.
Former Mets GM.
Which, by the
Brooke
way,
Hundley.
and I met him when I interned at Mad Dog Radio, actually. He was on the show before the show I interned on. They were the morning show, and I was coming in to do the show right after it as an intern. So I met him, actually.
Oh, really?
And, like, he does get a lot of shit, but, like, he's actually not a bad guy. He just made some mistakes.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying like it's like that. So that for that reason, I could see him maybe losing his job. It's similar to what happened with Tiki Barber.
Well, Tiki's not exactly the most morale type of person either. But
But the point is, this guy just put them both on blast. And I remember Shannon Sharp, I didn't hear the audio, but he said, take it up with your wife. He doesn't owe you any loyalty. And it's just like, yeah, if it's one thing if he didn't know she was married, but I mean, like, and if you know she's married,
that's the bro code, guys.
But he's like a step below.
No, but I'm saying, no, but that's like the bro code, as they say, like, hey, like she's married, like walk away. Like it's
right.
You don't do it. It's one of those things.
Like the same thing.
It's one of those things where you're just like, all right, morality. Even though I'm about to say something that's completely ironic, if the NFL, because NFL media obviously owns NFL Network, fires him, it would be kind of ironic because the NFL doesn't believe in morality ever.
Well, they do believe in morality. I mean, when it comes to players, it's like they do have like personal conduct codes and things like that. There's also, it's different with players because they have players unions and there's only so much they can really do. So their hands are often a bit tied.
I get that, but there's so much evidence in this one.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. It's really just the public outcry, I guess you could say, or how tarnishing it is to the brand. Now, to me, I don't think that he would get fired for this. The only reason I think it might happen, like I said, is because it was with a Ravens marching band member. Like that's the only reason why.
But I'm thinking also a tarnished reputation. Like leagues and networks don't want to deal with tarnished reputation because it's a PR nightmare.
Right. That's why, like Ray Rice will not get a broadcasting job.
Oh God, him and
that's why ultimately because
Jamal Lewis,
reputation.
Another one.
I don't think that. Who else did you say?
Was it Jamal Lewis or who? Or no, excuse me, Ray Lewis. Oh my God,
Ray Lewis. But Ray Lewis did get a broadcasting job.
Yeah, but he was an asshole too.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, he was very much involved. I mean, I can't say him, but the murder investigation 25 years ago that happened.
Right.
But yeah, that was a little. But like somebody like Ray Rice, because it was all on video, him beating his wife. He would never get a job in broadcasting. I don't think this is quite as bad as that.
And the only reason that he got a small suspension is because the NFL fucked up, like big time.
Well,
originally,
because the video got released.
No, but they gave him 2 games. Then they said, "Oh shit, we made a mistake. Give him 10."
The video got released,
and then they're like, and then the NFL Players Union said, you can't do that. You already gave the ruling, so they had to go back on it."
Right, because that's how the players' union works. The players' union always represents the players.
They're a pretty good players' union too.
It's a good player, not as good as the MLB players' union, but it certainly is up there. I mean, look, all the players' unions are good. Like they're all and there needs to be players' unions because it's billionaires versus millionaires,
But this story is just out there.
Yeah, it's way out there. But like, you also have to look at it from the husband. The funny. Like,
well, do you want to show the picture for the video audience?
So there's a few other things. So here is the screenshot that the husband posted. Here it is. Yeah,
this and let me. Yeah, I was going to say, bring the banner down for a second. We're not going to read this just because there's a lot of stuff on here, and for the video audience, we'll do the audio. If I can speak, the audio audience, we will describe some of what we're showing here, but. Let's just say this almost feels like rated X content going through a text message.
By the way, what's the contact she has saved for him? 3.
Oh, I turn it sideways. Think about it.
Turn it sideways.
It's supposed to look like a dick and balls.
Oh my God. Oh, I see it now.
And I'm sorry if you're eating or doing anything while listening or watching to this, but that's, I think, what the joke is supposed to be.
Yeah, some of this stuff is just like, it almost seems so cartoonish.
And they say guys are all weird.
Yeah, and also, yeah, and then and then the tweet says, "My wife works for the Marching Ravens," and tags the Ravens. She met Steve Smith Sr. at work. Steve Smith has been fucking my wife. I got receipts. I got a lot more, homie. Well, the funny thing is that it almost looks like somebody would do that to him to embarrass him.
Right. But at the same time, like, is it worth all the headache to go through this whole thing? Now,
you mean for the husband?
Yeah. Like,
yes, I think it is. And I think it makes a lot of sense from his perspective.
I'm not disagreeing that he should be angry. He has every right to be angry, and he should file for divorce. I hope there's no kids involved in this marriage either, because that's a whole different...
No, there are.
No, I'm saying I was hoping there wasn't, but if there is, that's a whole different issue.
There are kids involved.
So that makes it even worse, because guess what? Hey, everybody, mom's cheating with a former NFL Hall of Famer, and I screwed over my father. My father got screwed over.
Yeah, well, okay, so he posted from her Facebook account.
Which is wild, by the way.
I can read it. It says, "Hi, I am Nicole Martinez, though I won't be a Martinez much longer. You see, I have been cheating on my husband, and I have been doing so with the very famous Steve Smith Sr. Pics attached for reference. I had him hidden under 3, but that's been fixed. My husband bought me a house. He stood by my side after I had been arrested twice for domestic violence, and this is how I repay him and our son." See, there's plenty of messages here, Steve. Crazy, the kind of revealing messages a celebrity will send. Baltimore Ravens, I am also a member of your team band. I believe I violated some fraternization rules.
Yeah.
By hooking up with Steve at the training facility. ESPN, TMZ, Carolina Panthers, Antonio Brown.
Well, the Antonio Brown tag is wild. I'm just going to say that now.
Because Antonio Brown is a crazy nut that needs to have his phone taken away. He tags the Panthers. I don't know what that's going to do.
Because he was a Panthers Hall of Famer.
Okay, but he doesn't work for the Panthers now.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's that's the only logical reference I could make to it. But
yeah.
The AB thing is wild, because I guarantee you Antonio Brown behind the scenes is going, bravo, look what you did.
Did he post about it yet? He had to have posted about it.
I didn't see anything, because if he had posted about it, it would have gone viral. But because half the things AB posts are terrible and awful.
Yeah, but also kind of funny.
In some senses, but some of it just goes way too far.
Crazy.
But I'm looking at his Twitter account now. I don't see anything. But wow. Like, another scandal, and it's not even on the field for the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really that big of a scandal for the NFL exactly. Okay, who does he work for, Steve Smith? The NFL Network?
NFL Network, so NFL Media. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not even that. It's not
he works directly for the NFL, technically.
Yeah, that's true. But this is such a minor scandal for the NFL compared to, say, all the domestic violence cases with current players and things like that.
I could see them like pulling him off air, like, for a couple weeks. I mean, it's the off season anyway.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm trying to make light of this whole thing, but like, if you're gonna have a scandal, like, I guess you would do it in the NFL off season.
For the NFL, but the thing is, I think the scandal is so much bigger because it's at this time of the year in sports.
Well, yeah, but it's bad. Like, you shouldn't do this at all, number one.
Obviously.
NFL players, unfortunately, have a worse reputation than any other professional athlete when it comes to cheating and domestic violence and
When it comes to
scandals.
domestic violence, for sure, that they have a worse reputation,
Well,
I would say.
a lot of NFL players cheat too.
Yeah, and it's probably like that with all professional athletes.
Well, that's a good point.
I would venture to guess.
But we could beat this story in the ground the whole
Right.
episode.
Well, like my thought process was he was. This almost seemed a little bit calculated.
How
In a
so?
sense. No, by the husband as releasing it at this particular time.
You're talking about after the incident happened.
Right. Like I think. It seemed a bit calculated, but also I think his thought process was, I'm so upset about this, and I want to expose my wife and Steve Smith.
See, like when we were talking about this beforehand, we started recording the show. I said, I don't see how he wins in this situation by exposing Steve Smith Sr.
He wins by exposing his wife or soon to be ex-wife.
No, I get that, but like, I think you had said it to me the other day where you're like, Steve Smith Sr. would beat the crap out of this guy if he tried to do anything.
Yeah, he would, but they're not meeting face to face. It's all through the phone.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, like, you're saying, like, if he made any type of threat or anything whatsoever, which he didn't do, by the way. But
no, he didn't. And the thing is, but the reason he wins is because his soon-to-be ex-wife and Steve Smith Sr. are being exposed. That's the reason why. Like, his thought process is, I am going to post on social media and expose probably mostly his ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, because the truth is, his ex-wife and Steve Smith Sr. are both getting off easier if he doesn't expose them.
No pun intended.
It's true. Yeah, but it's true. If he doesn't expose them, they're both getting off easy, especially Steve Smith Sr. What even happens to him if this doesn't go public? Basically nothing. His family doesn't find out, let alone like all of social media. So to me, it makes a certain amount of sense, even though it hurts him a little bit too. I think he's just sort of like, look, I'm hurt anyway. Even though it's making this thing public, which isn't great for me, I would rather drag them down with me, is how I would put it.
Why do you think athletes pay for millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of PR protection when these type of incidents happen?
Because of things like this. But even if you do, it's like, even if he had her sign an NDA or something like that, which does happen a lot. If her husband finds out, well, he can release it because he didn't sign the NDA.
I mean, look at the whole Deshaun Watson situation. I think there was NDAs involved in that situation.
Yeah.
The Robert Kraft massage parlor, situation had NDAs involved in it. That's why we didn't get all the evidence.
Right.
That was involved. So, I don't know. This is a wild story.
It's a wild story. I mean, so you think that he's going to end up getting fired from NFL Network for this?
I could see him getting fired, but what I think the NFL is going to do in typical NFL fashion, they'll pull him off for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe.
Is he even on? Because I don't really watch the NFL Network much in the offseason. Is he even on TV right now?
I don't know if he's like considered part of the rotation that's during the season. So I don't know like what the NFL Network really does in the offseason. They do a lot of pre-taped programming because, again, there's no games. And I'm looking at his Twitter account now to see if anything's really been posted. And no, it's been 3 days since he's posted. So I don't know what they're going to do. But the NFL Network and the NFL have to do something. Because if they just say, all right, we're just going to sweep this under the rug like a dust bunny, and we're not going to do anything.
Because they can't sweep it under the rug. It's all out in the open. The cat's out of the bag.
True.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the jar, back in the however the saying goes. You can't put the toothpaste back.
Yeah. There's not much more we can really say about it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Moving the goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. Another scandal you didn't bring up, by the way, was the Brett Favre dick pic.
Oh,
That's
well,
another one.
You're talking about Jen, what's her name? Sturger. Which Brett Favre's an asshole. Let's just be real about it. Like, he was always doing weird stunts like that. And
yeah, I mean, we talk about Aaron Rodgers now.
No.
I mean, like, he at least didn't send a picture of his junk.
I mean, if he ends up on the Vikings, then it would be the same path as Brett Favre.
Anyway, so I want to get to this. Wemby and Popovich are out for the season.
Yeah.
Wemby has a blood clot. It's the same condition Chris Bosh had.
Yeah, so it's thumbrosis is what it's called.
Yeah, anything that ends in osis does not sound good.
No, it's basically a blood clot or what they call a blood disease in your body.
Right.
And Chris Bosh had it way worse than Wemby. Now, Chris Bosh was an older player, so that really did not help in his favor. And they said his was so bad that he was willing to sign a waiver that if he died while on court, like, the Heat would not be responsible for it. And they were close to doing that. And then the Miami Heat came to their senses and said, we don't want to be the first NBA team to have a player die on the court while playing. Yeah. So I don't blame them for that. Now, Wemby, first year in the NBA, much younger athlete, but it is a little concerning that he has a blood clot.
He's 21.
He's 21. But they said he's had some condition, not issues, but he's had, like, to fight this condition already, supposedly.
I didn't know about it.
I didn't know about it either. I found out more about it, and not his fault, but unfortunately this derails any potential, like, play-in tournament opportunity that the Spurs had. Wemby's going to be a really good player as long as he can get back to health and all that stuff. He's going to be one of the faces of the NBA for the next 5 to 7 years, at least. And Anthony and I actually covered this on Alley-Oop Analytics on our Substack, how Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp were saying that an international player could not be the face of the NBA. And I said, that's bullshit.
Well, what do they mean by, like, face of the NBA? Like, what does that even mean when people say
the number one, so to speak, between?
But like, what does that mean exactly? Like, the best player?
It's a mix between being the best and having the brand.
Okay. Now, I think that it's not that they can't. I would argue that it would be a lot harder to have an international player be the face of the NBA than an American player. That's what I think.
But my question to you, so the reason the actual argument came up, and of course it came up on First Take, so big surprise. Anthony Edwards, sorry.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards was asked in the post-game locker room, would you want to be the face of the NBA? And he said, no, I don't want that attention. I want nothing to do with being the face of the NBA. And I was shocked, like, completely shocked.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he said that?
Yes.
No, I was not shocked at all. I think it actually is. I think it sounds very characteristic of Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards is probably a top 5 guy in the NBA right now.
Arguably, I mean, he might not even arguably top 10 player right now, but I think he just wants to play basketball. I don't think he wants to be, like, the face of anything. I think that's just really what he cares about. He's an ultra competitor.
I get it, but at the same time, I found it odd that an NBA star, not just really good player, a star, came out and said, I don't want to be at the top of the NBA, be a face of the NBA. I found that a little strange.
Well, do you think Jokic wants to be the face of the NBA? Best player in the league right now. The face of the NBA?
I think he's uncomfortable with the attention, not necessarily. Exactly. So not necessarily being the face of the NBA. I think he's just uncomfortable with the media constantly being around him.
Right. Okay, so I think that Jokic has that personality. I think that you can be the best, and I think maybe one day Anthony Edwards will be the best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
He's one of the best right now. I think you can be the best player in a particular league and not be the face of it.
I mean, one name that they kept throwing around, and again, we're going to get accused of it, so I'm just going to bring it up anyway, comparing eras a little bit. But Kobe Bryant was a face of the NBA.
Yeah.
When he was in it, because he was the best characteristically, in my opinion.
Only for some of his career was he the face of the NBA.
Well, but Stephen A.
Period of time.
If you remember the classic Stephen A. bit with Skip Bayless at the time, where Skip said that Kobe was not a face of the NBA because he didn't feel like he was box office and one of the best in the league, and he kept taking. He kept taking other players over Kobe Bryant
as players.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was from that was from 10, 15 years ago, probably.
But it was just wild that Kobe had the box office and he had the it factor in the NBA for many years.
Yes. But I think for a much longer time, LeBron was the face of the NBA.
Well, that I agree with because, he had both. He was the best in the NBA and he had the box office with all the dunks and all the fancy passes and all that stuff. So he will always, in my opinion, LeBron will always be the face of the NBA regardless.
Yeah, well, I mean, for many years, Michael Jordan was the face of the NBA. The difference is that, Kobe, there was a lot more, people forget it now because he's retired and unfortunately dead. And people forget that how much of, there were a lot of PR nightmares with Kobe.
Well, yes.
A lot of them, not just the rape accusation in the early, that made him end up changing his number from 8 to 24, but also just him as a teammate. There were a lot of, the riff with him and Shaq, and I'm not saying he was completely wrong, but or him not being known for being a quote unquote ball hog and saying my teammates don't do anything and things like that. He had a reputation for that also, which certainly hurts. He doesn't have the squeaky clean reputation.
Well, no athlete does, though. No athlete has a squeaky clean reputation unless you're Derek Jeter.
I would argue some of them do. Okay, I'll give you I would argue Nadal and Federer have squeaky clean reputations. They do. Aaron Judge, squeaky clean. Outside of being bad in the postseason, squeaky clean reputation. Derek Jeter, Mariano, a lot of guys do.
Well, there's been some allegations, like Mariano had that whole incident with the church and the underage kids and the allegations.
That didn't come out till a month ago?
Well, yes. And Derek Jeter.
Until then, he had a squeaky clean reputation.
Or Derek Jeter was dating all the women and then giving them gift baskets when they left. But that's a whole. If that's the worst thing, then you're a saint. But
yeah, Michael Jordan had a very, I would argue in a sense he had a squeaky clean reputation, even though he did a lot of things to not have that type of reputation.
Like the gambling?
Well, I wouldn't even so much say the gambling. I would say more something like punching his teammate in the face.
Well, yeah, again, different era of basketball because you can get away with stuff like that. But
yeah, but if almost anybody else had done that, it would be if Draymond Green did it.
Well,
and he's still for
you actually beat me to my point. I was going to mention Draymond today. If he was in the 80s, 90s era, he would have fit right in the way he played.
He would have fit. There were many more Draymond Greens 30 years ago than there are today, and it's not even just that. It was Draymond Green is not just a rough player; he's a dirty player.
Yeah, but there were a lot of dirty players. I would say Charles Barkley was a dirty player way back when, to be quite honest.
He elbowed that guy from Angola in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So, a skinny little, some small.
But here's the problem, though, and I would say this about the NBA forever now. The NBA is soft, is completely soft now. If you polled all the players in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, and asked them about today's game, they would say it's a cakewalk compared to what happened in the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah, and I think that today's players 20 or 30 years from now are going to say the same thing about the league 20 or 30 years from now.
No, that's true.
Like, I think there's always, it's like talking to boomers about new music sometimes. Like, I think there's a certain level of bias in favor of your era
True.
as opposed to the previous or future eras or current eras in this case. So I think there is, look, I think the league is softer, is soft comparatively.
It's not even a question that it's way softer than it was
Way
way back when.
softer than it was in the 80s and 90s. There's a lot of I mean, like, there's a lot of things like load management. Not to mention, players kind of hated each other a little more in the 80s and 90s than they
Which
do now.
made for entertaining basketball.
Right,
least.
like Magic and Bird. I don't think they hated each other personally,
No.
but there was a big rivalry and there were fights and things like that. And by the way, Magic and Bird, it's an old documentary, but it's a really, really good one.
It is a good
one. I recommend you watch it. And yeah, that's another, like, that's just a great one. Now it's different. Now they're all friends and they want to team up and create super.
But that's every professional sport now. Like the Yankees and the Red Sox are palling around before games. Do you remember like early 2000s? They hated each other's guts. Like you couldn't even go on the other side of the batting cage.
Yeah. It was like the pitchers were throwing at hitters, all sorts of bullshit that was going on. But it's especially true in basketball with players just hating it, with players just being all buddy and wanting to join together.
Right. And also I want to get to the other part of this because I think it's important too. So he had a stroke early on in the season, a really bad stroke, not like just it happens
because this kind of stroke.
There's different levels is what I'm trying to get at, even though that didn't come out correctly. Yeah. But so he had a bad one, like a really bad one.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure if he was like going to come back. Now for this season, he's done. They said, we're not going anywhere. Just go recover, get yourself better, and we'll figure it out.
Has he coached at all this season?
Yeah. It happened during the season. It actually happened. I think they were on the road, if I'm not mistaken, during a road trip, and it happened. Now, you have to remember, he's in his 70s, I think middle 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He's been around a very long time. Like, he's outlasted a ton of veterans out there.
Yeah.
And the only reason, in my opinion, that he's still coaching is because Wemby is on this team, and he wanted to see that through.
Yeah. I think that makes sense, because he could have retired a while ago.
Wemby's a once-in-a-lifetime generational type player, like LeBron. So I don't blame him for sticking around now. Will the stroke kind of change that modification a little bit? I think so.
It might. He might just have to retire if it's this bad.
Or you get to a situation where the assistant coach is the one up and walking around while the head coach is sitting.
Yeah.
But that's kind of awkward too. But Pop will always be one of the top of the game. The Spurs were one of those teams before he got there that really went nowhere at all. He comes in, I think they won like 3 titles or 4 titles in a span of like 8 or 9 years. And he kind of put together the Parker, Ginobili, Duncan trio before it was cool to have a trio and a big 3. Now you can't even have a big 3 anymore because they finally implemented salary cap rules that don't allow you to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel bad for Spurs fans a little bit this season. They had their top-notch player. They had their coach. They were heading... I would have been happy if they made a play-in because they were not supposed to go anywhere. They were supposed to be the worst team in the NBA.
Would you argue they were supposed to be the worst team in the NBA this year just because they were the worst team in the NBA last year?
Oh, yeah. Like, they were supposed to be bad. Like,
because they at least... Okay, but it was Wemby's second year, and they have Chris Paul.
Chris Paul is a nobody. Let's just be real.
But that's still... But if your team is all the way at the bottom, that'll, like, make you closer to mediocre.
Right. But Wemby's still inexperienced, trying to learn the league in year 2.
The difference between first and second year is pretty big.
I agree with you, but I wasn't expecting him to play better, like as good with him.
They were much better, for sure. They were much better.
Good. There's a couple teams that I really look at. The Spurs is one. The Pistons is another one that's played well, and they're a 6th seed.
The Pistons were like the Chicago White Sox of the NBA last year.
And somehow Cade Cunningham finally came around and decided
they were a young team.
Well, so are the Spurs. I mean,
Exactly. They were both in similar positions. Last year they were bad because they were so young and inexperienced.
I still think the most ridiculous thing coming out of the All-Star break was getting disqualified during the skills contest because he decided to fake the shots to beat the clock. I mean, and then they wouldn't let the TNT sideline reporter talk to them to find out what happened. Like the NBA PR guy said, "Shoo, get away." And Stephon Castle, by the way, is a really good player too. Like he was in the dunk contest, and who's the other one that they just got? De'Aaron Fox in the trade. They actually have a good team. They really do, but they need Wemby.
Yeah, well, they also need Popovich. They need a little bit of both.
I mean,
they need Wemby more for sure.
They need Wemby. They have to have Wemby.
Yeah, they need, but especially Wemby.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about this NHL and NBA discourse.
This is hilarious
on social media. PK Subban. I guess the only time they talk about hockey on First Take is if they're comparing it to the NBA.
And I'm getting tired of this, to be honest, too.
Oh, you mean like the NHL versus NBA rivalry? You know what? I will say this. I think the NBA lives rent-free in NHL fans' heads.
Yes.
And I think that like NHL fans talk about the NBA way more than NBA fans talk about the NHL. Like it's always these things like it's odd to me how the NBA and NHL have sort of become rival sports in a sense.
Yes.
And the reason is fairly obvious. It's because they both play at the same time. It's both like they're slightly different, but October through June. So everything that the playoffs, the regular season all go on around the same time. But NHL season starts a little earlier. That's it. But
I think former NHL players like PK Subban get offended when their sport, like the NBA or the NFL, beats them out. Like,
yeah.
And I get it. By the way, I will give the NHL a ton of credit for the Four Nations tournament that they put on instead of the All-Star break. Brilliant. Genius. And I think they got the matchup they wanted in the finals, which was US and Canada, which is what everybody wanted. Obviously, the 3 fights in 9 seconds of playing time, amazing. But it's never going to beat the NBA, the NFL. Now, could Major League Baseball be beat by the NHL? It's possible.
No.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit.
No, I don't think. Look, the NHL is a guaranteed 4th most popular sport. And if you include college football and college basketball, it would be like 6th.
I mean,
and there's really no way around it.
Now, we're two biased people because we're not NHL fans.
No, but I don't think we are biased. I'm just looking at it objectively. Like, even if I were a big NHL fan, I would say the same thing. It's like, okay, even if you like baseball and basketball, I think are much more comparable in terms of the popularities, just in different ways. The NBA is bigger nationally. The MLB is bigger locally, depending on the market you're in.
Well, MLB is now having issues with what's the word? The TV localities. I keep forgetting the word. It's out of my head at the moment.
Yes.
But the affiliates and all that stuff.
Right. But like the point is that like hockey could do everything right, and I'm not saying they're doing everything wrong either. They're doing a lot of things right. There is no way hockey in the United States could be as popular as baseball, football, or basketball. There's no way that could ever happen. And the biggest reason is because most Americans never played hockey.
No, that's
only
true.
In the North.
Well, it was a Canadian sport. That's how it started.
Right. Okay, maybe even if you look at the markets in the United States that are where hockey is the most popular, I would argue maybe in areas like Minnesota that I'm less familiar with or something like that, way up north.
You're talking about where it's not like where the NHL could be the opportunity of a first sport in a certain state, depending, which is rare. I can't think of many.
Even there, like I would venture to guess football, basketball, baseball are more popular. I mean, like even if you look at a team like the Minnesota Wild, do they play in like Minneapolis or something, a big city? Like I would venture to get, so you take the Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota Twins, Timberwolves.
Oh, I would take those 3 instantly over.
Those 3 teams are way more popular than the Minnesota Wild. I would venture to guess that if I were to listen to Minnesota sports talk radio, the Minnesota Wild would be the last topic that would be the last team that they talk about.
But I think
up there, or even if you look at like New York, like the range, like even New York and Boston, hockey is big compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah, but the Bruins actually won some titles in a stretch.
Yeah, but the point is that even if you go to Boston, where the Boston market, where not the restaurant, the sports media market, where hockey is relatively compared to the rest of the United States pretty big, in New York, where the Rangers and Islanders, Devils are all relatively
three freaking hockey teams, and they still can't win.
But what I'll say is, those even there, it's like not even close. I mean, in New York, baseball and football are the two biggest. Same thing in Boston, probably. Baseball and football are the two biggest. Then it's basketball. And then way below that is hockey. Like,
agreed. It's not close.
So, I mean, even there, like, I just don't think the NHL really can compete with those leagues, which is just a long-winded way of me saying that, like, it is weird to, like, I don't understand why these two sports have to be rivals. And there's a few reasons why. First of all, there is very little overlap between these sports. And what I mean by that is, if you look at, say, players, like hockey players and basketball players, there are very few basketball players that could have been pros in hockey and vice versa. And
I hate that argument, by the way.
Which argument?
The whole, like, who could have been a professional in each other's sport?
No. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is, like, if you look at a sport like basketball or football, there's a lot of football and basketball players that could have swapped sports that have a background in the other, like LeBron played football, things like that. Or you look at like football and baseball players. There's a lot of baseball players that have played football and then football players that have played baseball or whatever. But I would argue that there is less overlap between hockey players and basketball players than any other two major sports. Like, you have very few basketball players that have played hockey, very few hockey players that have played basketball. In fact, there's none that I even know of that play professionally. Whereas you can name a lot of them in football, baseball, and basketball that have played in each other's sports, is really the point I'm making. So that's one reason that I think it's a bit absurd. The other reason is I think the viewership of these two sports overlaps less than the other sports do. And what I mean by that is,
no, I see that.
What I mean by that is, there's a lot of baseball players baseball fans that watch a lot of football, and, you know, football and basketball fans that go together and things like that. The only people who watch basketball and hockey are like diehard sports fans who also watch football and baseball for the most part. I don't know many people. I don't know anybody who is like a really big hockey fan, a really big basketball fan, and is not that big in baseball or football. You know what I mean? So those two sports are like the furthest apart in a sense. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but like it's the least common amongst them. So that's the other reason that I just find it to be like a little odd. And here's the other thing that I'll say for all of like the really big hockey fans that are praising the NHL right now and bashing the NBA.
It's stupid.
So here's what I'll say. Your biggest thing right now that you're praising is the All-Star game.
Essentially.
Like, okay, so the All-Star game was better. Okay, that's like one weekend out of the year. The rest of the time, like even the rest of the time, the NBA is still going to be way more popular. And I'm not saying that really matters. It doesn't. But it's just like, okay, so your one argument is the All-Star game was so much better. It's the least important thing. It's the All-Star game. It's an exhibition game.
It's a dumb argument. Now, I understand where hockey fans are coming from. You play for your country. You play for your flag. I get it. You saw more hits in these games than NBA All-Stars would ever take in 10 years, being in this dinky All-Star game that you call the NBA All-Star game. But again, the NBA brand, the NFL brand, the MLB brand, the college football brand will always be bigger because there are more people interested in those sports than they are the NHL. Yeah. Sorry, but it's a fact.
Well, the NHL has a very small but passionate audience.
Mostly Canadian.
Really big. A lot of them Canadian. Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of New Yorkers, like Boomer Esiason, who's like a diehard Ranger fan. You have a whole lot of Ranger diehards and things like that.
I still think that's a load of BS. By the way,
no. He's a really big Ranger fan.
No, but I'm saying the station had to find somebody to be a fan, so that because they have the hockey rights to carry it.
Yeah,
but,
well, yeah. So, I mean, the point is, though, is that like hockey fans are probably on average more diehard than the fans of, not college football, but all the other sports other than college football. But it still is a small percentage of like sports fans that really are hockey fans.
I mean, there's the whole other part of the argument, which we could talk about in the other topic you have here also, which has to do with baseball.
Yes. So the MLB and ESPN part ways.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Or really, the ESPN parted ways with the MLB. So no more baseball tonight.
Well, okay. Well, there's some speculatory stuff here because who bashed who in this argument? Number one, MLB put out a statement and basically said, well, we don't like the way ESPN is covering us, so we separated from them. ESPN has come out and said, we don't want to pay $550 million a year anymore, so we're separating from you.
Right.
So it's a battle of he said, she said right now.
Well, it's now, if that's the reason that the MLB didn't like the way they cover, is it because ESPN shows don't talk about baseball that much?
Well, also, over the last couple of years, they've been cutting down the amount of regular season games that ESPN has been showing. They're not doing baseball tonight as much or really at all. They got rid of it, essentially.
Because baseball is a local sport.
It's a local sport that's covered nationally.
It's covered nationally, but the point is that like it's just from just nationally speaking, it's way behind football and basketball. It's like not even close nationally.
Well, I think the issue is the local partners. That's been a huge issue, trying to figure out the TV rights and who reserves the rights to what. Can Major League Baseball package the local rights to make it more nationally televised? Teams are not going to allow it. They have their own partners. Heck, look what happened with, and this is more NBA, but look what happened with MSG and Optimum, which finally came to a deal. That's locally in New York, in case anyone's wondering. But it took them forever. It took them months.
Yeah.
The Knicks and the Rangers and everything was off TV on Optimum.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but like, my thoughts on this are just that, I mean, like, I guess baseball is just not that popular compared to all the other.
It also doesn't make the money that it needs to make. And that's why ESPN is out of the baseball business, at least for the time being, because there's a speculatory story out there that maybe they dropped the deal to renegotiate a new one, possibly, which could happen. They're off the radio side. ESPN has covered Major League Baseball since 1990.
Wow.
And this is going to be the first year after 2025, no baseball on ESPN.
Well, I mean, look, they'll still show baseball highlights like on SportsCenter and things like that.
If they have rights to it.
So you're saying SportsCenter would no longer be able to show MLB highlights?
That's part of the deal, the money that they pay.
They show highlights for every sport. I mean, they even showed hockey highlights on SportsCenter.
If it's a big event and they don't have the right to the sport, they can only show the still pictures and play the audio.
Oh, okay. Then that would screw things up a lot because, over the summer, there's going to be a lot of baseball highlights.
Right. And ESPN was the big motive there. They made MLB coverage the way it is. But I also get it because Major League Baseball's not worth $550 million a year.
What do they pay for the NBA?
Oh, God. The deal they just signed, it's embarrassing, the amount of money. They're paying in the billions for the NBA.
Do you think that maybe this has to do with the NBA deal and they want to cut costs?
Yes and no. Because, yes, they just paid a shitload for the NBA games. They have the NBA finals. They have all that stuff. They wanted to keep that because everyone's going to watch on ABC when the NBA finals is on. And heck, they just updated their broadcast booth with Breen and Doris, and now Richard Jefferson is now taking the third seat in the finals booth, which I like RJ, by the way. I think he's a really good analyst. He's turned into a good one. But something had to give. And Major League Baseball's not worth $550 million a year. It's not.
No.
I don't know what you would pay for it. I mean, did you see the Roku deal that Major League Baseball did or no?
No.
They're paying $10 million a year for Roku games.
Wow.
So think about that number for a second. $10 million to $550 million. Is ESPN... ESPN had to do in their own head, are we 55 times more valuable than every other deal that Major League Baseball is making?
Right. Well, how about the NBA deal, though? That's a lot.
That's a little bit apples and oranges, though, because you're comparing sports.
But the NBA is more popular.
Yes. From a global branding standpoint, they're way bigger.
Yeah, an NBA game, at least certainly the games that they broadcast will.
I mean, they travel to China and Germany and Brazil. I mean, baseball's trying to do it too. It just doesn't work. No one wants to see the game.
Baseball is popular globally in other ways too. I mean, a whole lot of players. I mean, there's more international baseball players than I would say all the major sports other than hockey.
I mean, the only thing that's saving Major League Baseball right now is Shohei Ohtani. That's who's saving baseball right now. If it wasn't for Shohei, they'd be in the shitter. They'd be making no money.
But I wouldn't say they'd be in the shitter. Like, I think people say baseball's a dying sport, and you're probably a bigger baseball fan than I am. And I'll say, I think that argument is very overstated. That baseball's a dying sport. It's not a dying sport. It's just not as good as football or basketball.
I would say it's not a fast enough sport is really where I would go with it.
I'm not saying that it's like it's growing as fast as football and basketball, but let's just remember that Juan Soto just got paid $765 million. That doesn't happen in a dying sport.
But that has nothing to do with the sport and the ratings. That had to do with Steve Cohen being a drunken sailor, having billions of dollars and spending it.
Right, but he wasn't the only one who offered him a lot of money. The Yankees didn't offer him that much less money.
And I'm not disagreeing, but if it wasn't for Steve Cohen's heavy pockets, that money is not there.
But the point I'm making is that if baseball were a dying sport, players wouldn't be getting paid that much money. Hockey players don't get paid that.
Because the money's not there.
Right, exactly.
The TV money's not there.
The reason the money is there is because it still is fairly popular, especially locally. I mean, baseball in New York, which is the biggest market in the country, is still huge. It's right up there with the NFL.
Now, let me point out something else because I was talking about Roku, $10 million a year. Apple pays $85 million. So they're still way under the ESPN number. And they're airing a Friday night package, and that's all they air. By the way, I don't think anyone watches baseball on Apple. Let's just be real.
No, I actually have.
But I'm saying it's not huge. The audience is not huge.
No. I remember Cliff Floyd was on a broadcast along with Katie Nolan.
I happen to have liked Katie Nolan. I saw a few of the broadcasts with her on it, but it's very awkward. I don't know if you remember when Aaron Judge was going for the home run record and the Yes Network was trying to pay off Apple so that Michael Kay could call the record-breaking home run. That was awkward, by the way. But
I actually don't think that would be such a bad thing for Michael Kay to actually be able to call that.
But Apple was never going to release the rights to that.
No.
But it says MLB receives an average of $729 million from Fox and $470 million from Turner Sports per year under deals that expire after the 2028 season. So they're still making money, but the ESPN deal is going to hurt them. That they opted out 3 years before the deal was over. Yeah.
It's just one of those weird sort of media stories about. But like a lot of people are criticizing the NBA deal. They're like, you paid all this money for the NBA, and you're not willing to spend any of it on the MLB.
Because again, I think the NBA has more global reach and appeal to make money.
There's more national, forget global, more national reach and appeal.
And also you have partners like Amazon who are interested in the NBA, who are coming in starting next year.
Yeah.
The NBC from years ago coming back in the mix, spending way more money than they've ever spent on the NBA. ESPN is still there. ABC is still there. The only one that's not going to be there is Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT, and that's because their head of sports is an asshole. and didn't handle it properly. So they're fine. Like the NFL, quickly. CBS, Fox, ESPN, and then ABC is going to get a Super Bowl deal now that they've paid the money. So you're going to see it on Disney for the first time in this rotation. So they have all the major networks and partners. MLB, I don't know what they have right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Wait, can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Yankees repeal the no facial hair rule.
I love this.
I love how Yankee fans are freaking out about this.
This is stupid.
A lot of Yankee fans are like, "What? Might as well just get rid of the pinstripes now." You know,
I'm a Yankee fan, and I think this is stupid.
It's a stupid rule. It makes no sense. It was implemented in 1976, I think.
Yeah.
To me, the only reason, let's put it this way. Let's just put this in perspective. If a team or an owner or something, if an owner of any sports team in the country suggested that we create this rule, everybody would call him crazy. But we've all just been used to the Yankees having this rule is the reason why so many fans are freaking out about it. And it's like, to me, I don't think that any rule that's created in 1976 has to stay around for 50 years.
I think this was just George Steinbrenner, like consummate professional way back when. That was just his rules. And unfortunately, like, it was stopping them from getting free agents. Every year it stopped them from getting free agents, even though I think it's silly that players are turning down contracts because they have to shave their beard.
But I think it's a lot of it is the control aspect of it. Even if you don't care that much about having a beard, a lot of players might say like, yeah, but I might not care that much about having a beard, whatever, but I don't want them controlling my face. Like, that might be their viewpoint.
Yeah, but you're getting paid millions upon millions of dollars.
You're going to get paid millions upon millions of dollars from other teams too, not just the Yankees.
No. And again, I'm not disagreeing, but if the Yankees are going to offer you all this money, I think they have a little bit of a right to control the way the brand is that the Yankees have.
They have a right to. Every team has a right to, but the players have a right to not go there.
It's fair, like that they can do what they want. Players can do what they want. And this is such a non-story, in my opinion. Like Johnny Damon, the king of the hair. I mean, what was it? What was his nickname? Jesus, because of his hair being so long. I mean, he said, I found this funny. He said that he hates that the rule was changed.
Why?
He actually wanted it to remain that you had to do the shave and everything.
So fewer free agents would go there?
He just said he believes in the brand mentality and like the Yankee brand of the way it was. Nick Swisher, same thing. He said the same thing. I don't like the brand change.
Okay, so it sounds like everybody's supporting this just because they're used to it.
Essentially.
Like, that's really just what it is. Like, if they had implemented this now, it would seem ridiculous. You also have to remember, this was the 70s that they came up, that this rule was implemented. Times are different now. Beards are like very in. The 70s was a weird time.
I don't like the long scraggly beards though. It looks kind of ridiculous when they're playing with them though.
I mean, I think it does too, but the point is that beards are much more in now than they used to. And not only that, players have more power. So ultimately, I don't think this facial hair rule was helping the Yankees. It wasn't.
Well, who's the son? Because I get them confused because one of them's not alive anymore. I think it's Hal. Hal is the one that's running the team now. Listening to him at the press conference was so awkward. Basically saying like, all right, we're going to not have this rule anymore and let guys be. And it was just funny that all the old-fashioned Yankees came out and said, leave the rule as it is. Don't have a no facial hair policy rule. I just found that hilarious.
Well, you're saying all the old time, yeah. Except, of course, they're going to say that because they're biased in favor of that.
I guarantee you, there were some guys that didn't want to shave their facial hair.
No, but what I'm saying is that like the old time Yankees are biased in favor of the rule from their era.
That's true. I mean, I can't argue that.
But to me, I don't hear anybody like actually defending the facial hair rule. I can't like everybody just keeps saying it's tradition. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but anything invented, like any rule that's implemented in 1976 shouldn't necessarily still be around today. I mean, the 1970s was a wild time,
I mean,
especially in New York.
I mean, this is a horrible example, but I think it makes the point. Rob Manfred calling the World Series trophy a piece of tin. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, does tradition really matter to Rob Manfred? Apparently it does not.
Well, this has nothing to do with Rob Manfred. This is a Yankees thing.
No. I'm just making the point that obviously tradition doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
it starts from the
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. There's no way this rule could help the Yankees. There's no way it could. There's no way it could help them with like free agents or anything like that.
Actually, I think it would.
You think it would?
I absolutely think it would because
No. I mean like the original rule.
Oh, you mean not having the facial hair?
No, I'm saying like not allowing players to have facial hair definitely hurts them.
No, but I'm saying now that this rule is now in play that you can have a beard. This absolutely helps the Yankees because
that's the point.
And even though they're trying to downplay it and say like, "Oh, it's not a big deal," no, this is the Yankees finally realizing that they've got effed out of all these big free agents they could have had over the years.
Yeah, has it ever occurred to some Yankee fans that like not everybody cares about tradition? And something tells me that this has something to do with Juan Soto going to the Mets. I think it made like I don't know, maybe they would have changed the rule anyway, but I think there's I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but there's a strong possibility that maybe they realized we don't have the power like we used to. People don't care about the tradition or about our pinstripes, and we haven't won a World Series in 16 years. That might be like I'm not saying it definitely was. I'm just saying that's plausible to me.
It's not. He was going to take the biggest check wherever that was.
But the point is that it shows that the Yankees don't have the power like they used to. And here's what the question I would ask the Yankee fans. Would you rather have the facial hair rule or be able to like sign a star player who wants to have facial hair? Like, what would you rather do if given the choice?
Me as a Yankee fan, now I grew up knowing the rule. That's the only thing I knew, but I would take the rule change.
Exactly.
Just give me the players. We have not won a World Series since 2009.
Right. We'd rather have the players.
Now, I'm not speaking for Mets fans who haven't won in a long time, but I don't think you guys have a facial hair rule. You guys are allowed to do whatever, essentially.
No other team has a facial hair rule.
It's silly. I mean, what's next? Are we going to have Raleigh Fingers come back from the past and we're going to wax his mustache again? I mean, like, this is ridiculous. I mean, the Yankees have other issues on their hands, including Mike Stanton being not healthy again, but I digress on that front. This is so ridiculous and a non-story that like people are making it into a bigger deal.
I don't think it's a non-story. I think it's a pretty big story. It's just that I agree with it. I agree with what the Yankees did.
No, I agree. They had to do it. It was time.
Yeah.
How long can you be old-fashioned for? The Yankees need to get with this era.
Yeah, exactly. They need to get, and that's been the biggest criticism of Major League Baseball, it seems like.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, all right. So that's our show today. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Nick Morganson. This is Moving the Goalposts. See you.
See ya.